Hello, Jen here with a December daily layout for you. Actually, this is not a layout. I'm just so used to saying layout. This is a December daily project, I guess we can call it. So I'm using the CraftersCompanion, a Christmas Dream collection. And what I have is this pad here, which is the 8x8 toppers pad. And then I also have the Nutcracker die cut and the Sugar Plum Fairy die cut. I have the stamp set with all of the Christmas sentiments, and the die cuts also, or the dies, I guess, also have the stamps in them. So in that topper pad, what you're going to get is multiple pages of die cuts that you punch out. I think there are 4 different pages, and then you get 4 of each page. So there's literally thousands of die cuts. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but there are a lot. There are a lot of die cuts. And then you get 4x4, pages of 4x4 squares. And those squares you would cut out, and then you could use them as journaling spots, or maybe the base for an embellishment cluster. Or I really think where this kind of pad shines and what it's designed for is card making. This is definitely a card maker's dream. And so that is what you are seeing here. All I punched out was one of each page of die cuts, and then I did go and cut the squares, but I don't end up using those here, so I'm not really showing you that. But I went ahead and punched out one of each of the 4 pages. So everything you saw me pull out of that little baggie, that was me kind of doing the work ahead of time so that you didn't have to just watch me punching out shapes. They're all perforated and ready for you to punch out really easy. And you don't have to punch them all out. You can leave everything in the pad and just go ahead and punch out what you need. But you saw how much I had there. It was a lot. And so I organized them a little bit while I was sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. There are enough die cuts here that you could definitely make a bunch of layouts. Cards, again, like I said, is really what this is designed for. But you know me, I always want to try to think of something a little bit different, a little bit out of the box. And so when I had all of my images pulled out, and they have everything. This is obviously a Nutcracker theme. And so they have the Nutcrackers, they have some Sugar Plum Fairies, they have snow globes, they have the cutest little mice, like the Mouse King with the crown on and things like that. And then of course there's also Christmas trees and presents and poinsettias and other kinds of flowers and baubles and all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of images to make different kinds of clusters and, layer up different things, different scenes. There are tags and banners and that kind of stuff too. So definitely a good mishmash of different types of die cuts. And then of course you've got those 4x4 squares if you were building a scene on a card, or using those for journaling, and a base for your clusters. There's a lot that you can do, but I sorted everything out. So I only took the larger images and then the kind of the characters. So I've got my little nutcrackers, I've got snow globes, I've got the Sugar Plum Fairies, I've got a couple of the mice, that kind of thing. I counted those all out, and I was able to get almost 25 of them. I could have obviously taken multiples off of, the multiple pages. So I probably could have done this with just all nutcrackers if I wanted. I think there would have been enough between all of the pages to just do this with nutcrackers, but I kind of wanted to see what I could do with just one of each of those pages, because there truly is a ton of die cuts in just those 4 pages. So I was able to get almost 25. So I thought, I'm going to do day markers for December Daily. So I decided to do 1 through 25. And in order to make up the difference, I needed to use my stamps and use the dies to go ahead and cut out a couple extra images. And now these images are just slightly different from what you'll get in the die cut pack. So you're not like duplicating something that's already there for you. So that's kind of nice too. So I went ahead and stamped and then cut those out. And now I'm going to use my long lost bag of markers, if you can believe it. I totally forgot I had this bag of markers and watercolor pens. These are the Jane Davenport watercolor brushes that came preloaded with colors. Like, I totally forgot about this. I have not used these in at least 5 years. That's crazy. So, hello, here they are. New toys to play with. New to me, but also old to me toys to play with. So I'm going to leave this whole process in so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. Also, I like to leave this in because I'm not a great stamper. And I definitely don't pretend to be a good stamper. And I make all of the rookie mistakes, and I repeatedly make those rookie mistakes because I'm lazy, I think, sometimes. And where I keep my stash of stuff, oops, I just made a mistake right there. You guys don't know it, but my red just like blobbed out all over her wing and her dress and everything. So yeah, but where I craft most of the winter, once it gets really dark really early here, is not in the same place where I keep all of my stuff. And so if I'm not totally prepared or I don't really know what I'm doing with my projects, sometimes I just don't want to run back downstairs, pull stuff out, bring it up, and, you know, do the whole thing. And I don't pull my stamps out as much as I should. So I like to keep this in to kind of show you the realness of my crafting, and that if stamping and using dies and then coloring images in and doing all of that is really daunting for you, there you can see it just like splooged all over. So I will be better with this one. But if that is something that's kind of daunting for you, I totally get that. The card makers on YouTube are the ones that are really big, all the names that we know. They do that professionally. They get paid to do that. It's their day job. They do it all the time. And sometimes they just make it look so easy. And then when we try to replicate it, we just don't reach the perfection that we think that they reach. And so it can be discouraging. And I know that other people feel that because I've heard that multiple times, and I've had people tell me that multiple times. So I like to keep my process in my videos so you guys can see that I screw up all the time. I definitely know that using a mat works better, and yet I didn't use my mat for the first few times I stamped. So I know that I'm always going to have a piece of paper that I can stamp on where I can do it multiple times. That way I can, pick and choose which images work the best. And then I just sometimes go for it. But I did in this case, you'll see here, I will reach for my little rubber mat, but you could use a mouse pad or anything like that. That can help you if you're struggling to get your images nice and crisp and clean. Also, I never use the stamp directly out of the package. I always season it just because sometimes it's just super perfect. The image is perfect. There's nothing for the ink to kind of sit on and grip on with the stamp. And other times there's like a coating on the stamp. We don't really know it, but in the processing, especially these polymer stamps, there's like a coating that will bead up, and so you kind of need to season your stamp, and which means sometimes just taking your hand and rubbing it over your hand and getting the oils off of your fingers onto the stamp and like roughing it up a bit, or touching it to your jeans, or there are tools that you can buy to season your stamp, scrubbers that you can kind of rub on it, like a rubber scrubby thing. I don't know the names. This is what I'm talking about. But there are tools you can buy, or people will sometimes use erasers as well, white erasers, just to kind of scuff it up. The same way that you might use sandpaper to scuff up some plastic if it's a nice smooth plastic before you try to paint it, or that type of thing. You're just getting it ready. You're prepping your stamp. So I do that, and it's always helpful, but it is nice to make sure that you can stamp it a couple times. And I find sometimes stamps just naturally have imperfections in them, and then there's other stamps that the more you use them, the better they come out. So you kind of have to play with each of your individual stamps to see what works best. Also, clean your stamps. These stamps will forever be black because I used archival ink, but I take the buildup off of them, because that buildup can kind of layer on your stamp and you won't always get clean, crisp images. And that might take a long time. And so you might find you're using it over and over again and you think, Jen, this is fine. My image is looking really good. But there will come a time where it might have too much buildup on it and it's just not going to stamp as cleanly. So couple little tips here, but mostly I just stamp as many as I can and fully understand that it's just paper. And so if I need to stamp or try again or start over or whatever, that I will just do that. But what I did think would be fun here, I stamped on some vellum and then I cut out the skirt. I just fussy cut out the skirt. I used a little bit of glitter glue to give kind of some shimmer to the skirt. I just followed the lines that were in the skirt. And then I did the same thing with the wings. I cut out those stamped wings, and that image was actually the image that my paint ran. And so I cut out the wings where the paint had run into them and replace them with the vellum wings from one of my stamped images. And I just touched, just with my finger, the tiniest little bit of gold spritz, like a gold spray, so that there's a little bit of gold on those wings. So it zhuzhed it up a little bit. I think it gave her this really pretty kind of more ethereal feel than just the white paper wings. And then with the dress, it just kind of added a little bit of depth to it and gave it a little more personality than the rest of the images, which are also really pretty. You can see they have this watercolor look to them, and the pretty pinks and purples and lighter greens and blues and stuff. So the whole thing is really stunning, but I just wanted her to stand out. I thought she could be in red and green and be my 25-day marker and be much more Christmassy than the rest of the images. So once I had her done, I also colored in my other stamped nutcrackers. You can see they're a little bit bigger than the nutcrackers that came in the punch out die cuts, and I just used pencil crayon for them. They had more details to them, and I thought I'm not going to be able to be as precise with those Jane Davenport colors, so I went with pencil crayons. And I think it doesn't matter that they're not all colored and look exactly the same, because honestly, they're going to be on different pages telling different stories. So might as well go for it. And then the fun. I went through all the other images and I did a couple little hints of embellishment here and there, but not on all of them. And then I had to give them all numbers. And that was honestly the hardest part, because not enough collections have enough twos to do an entire month of numbers. So, you've got to find the different twos. you've got to find enough ones to get through all those teens, plus 21. You know, if you're doing this in a specific color, you may have to pre-prepare and just go out and make sure you have enough thickers. I wanted them in thickers because I wanted a different texture from the paper. I wanted a different look to them. I just wanted the number to stand out within the image. But, you know, this would also be a great place to pull out a stamp set and stamp all of the numbers. Or if you have dies that cut out numbers, you could definitely use that too. The other thing for me was just that they needed to be small because I didn't want the numbers taking up the entire image. So, you know, I had to get a little bit creative, but I did have this pack of gold letters and numbers that I was able to mostly use. There's a few different fonts to them. And so I was able to kind of get those used up. And then you can see some of these guys have, I think those red ones are Paige Evans thickers, kind of that like plasticky, foamy thicker. And so I did use those. And what I ended up having to do was kind of go back and pull some numbers up. I didn't want all of them to be clumped up, so they're all kind of feeling random. So I did have to do a bit of arranging, but here you can see all of those numbers. Most of them are gold. I thought that was just a really nice touch to have them all in gold. And there are a lot of the images. So ballerinas and the nutcrackers and a couple of those really cute little mouse kings or mouse princes and the snow globes. And that's it. That is 1 through 25. All done. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them because I don't know if this is really going to work for my theme this year, but stay tuned because I will definitely do something with them. And go head to Scrap Shotz if you want to grab all of this stuff. The link will be down below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, happy scrapping. Bye.